Cool. So I'm back again, doing some more Facebook Live videos. So I'm just I'm testing the environment really just to make sure that everything's working as it should be and that we can share videos and things like that. Just as a precursor to anybody watching this video, I am going to be giving away a free copy of my book to the first person that leaves a comment or asks a question about this video. So if you're watching and something piques your interest, then get in touch. Leave a comment against the video, and if it's a good comment or question, then I will pop a copy of the I might give away more than one book, who knows. Depends on how generous I'm feeling today as the video goes on. So the purpose of this video today, basically I'm going to be talking about branding in a big way. It's kind of something which I'm really passionate about. So one thing which I want to do is to offer my free top 10 guide to the most common mistakes that people make when buying branding or designing their logo. So my first tip is around doing it yourself. So doing it yourself is great because it can potentially be free, fantastic. But the thing that's going to be missing is if you're not a graphic designer, you're not going to create something which necessarily represents the true value of your business. A graphic designer will look into the core values of your business and how long it's been established for and all that sort of thing. They will be using their experience, dozens of years of, tens of years of experience in the graphic design industry and designing things generally, to know how to get represent the best value for your logo, and things which as design makes there are very subtle differences in design, so which happen on a very subconscious scale, in a very unsubconscious way. And it's based on feeling. So if we look at something, so say for example, if I look away from the camera now and I'm just kind of talking into space, immediately you're kind of still engaged, you're probably listening to me, but your level of trust for me has just gone down compared to if I face you and look at the camera. You can see that all of a sudden you can see my face, my facial expressions directly. I'm looking straight at you, and the level of trust is much greater. So the same principles apply to branding. If you have a logo designed and there's something not quite right about the color schemes, the fonts you've used, the way, if it's slightly cliched or whatever, I'll talk about that later on. People just constantly, they feel like they just don't quite trust it. That will, it means that their trust level is lowered and they're less likely to engage with you. So when I talk about engagement, we're talking about picking up the phone, speaking to you, asking about your products and services and things like that. So like I said, imagine that you've got the difference between somebody looking directly at you and talking to you, or looking away from you and talking to you. How does that make you feel? How does this make you feel when I'm talking to you personally? The principles of design are really, really important, and that's why if you're not a professional graphic designer and you decide to design your logo yourself, you may be lowering the trust that is given to your potential customers. My second tip is based around colour schemes, and I have this. I use the KISS principle, so keep it simple, stupid. And the moment you go from one colour to two colours in your logo, your colour palette, there's double the amount of information for somebody viewing your logo to remember. So that's why you'll see a lot of a big design trend at the moment is to be for logos to be a single. A block of flat colour basically, so we'll call it flat design, because it's just easier to remember. So a common thing which is going around on Facebook at the moment is, or in the design world certainly, is if I asked you to remember what is the colour of the G in the Google logo, could you remember? So the answer's blue if you go and look at it, but off the top of your head, could you have remembered that? And the reason why you can't remember is because, okay, so there's an element that it might be insignificant, but also there's just too much information to remember because they've got about 4 or 5 colours in there. But Google is Google and they can kind of get away with that. For smaller, lesser known brands, if you introduce colour, it just builds noise and confusion into your logo. So reduce the number of colours down that you're using as much as you possibly can. And if you remember back in the day, so Apple computers, or Apple, started out life as Apple computers, and if you look at their first logo, it's just a mess. The second version of the logo was much more like the Apple symbol, which we remember today, but it's a rainbow colour, so it's got horizontal colours, about 8 different colours in it, and it's awful. So go and have a look at the evolution of the Apple logo, and you'll start to know what I mean. And now it's just a single outline, no drop shadows, no gradients, just one block of colour, nice simple outline. My third tip is based around the use of brand guidelines. So brand guidelines are there essentially, it can be like a 1 or 2 page document, simple as that, with your logo, spacing, colour palette laid out, and typefaces that you're going to use in your brand. And the reason why this is so important is when you get some sign writing done on your van, if you're going to get some business cards printed out, if you're going to get somebody to design your brochure, everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, and all of your design, your branding assets are going to be really, really consistent. So having literally it's a 2-pager PDF document that you can send out to your designer or printer, and it's got the colour references on there and high-res versions of the logo ready, which you can send with the PDF. Just explaining to people how to use your brand, and then everything will be consistent. If things aren't consistent, remember going back to what I was saying about trust. People, if they get an inconsistent message, say they look at your sign and the logo is different to your website, they might look at them and think, well, they're not the same company, and go away and be confused and go and find another provider. So consistency is the key here. The fourth thing is having too many fonts. There's nothing wrong with having a typeface for your logo, and then a different typeface for the headings on your website, and then have a standard sans serif font for your body text. But I would suggest that you don't want any more than 3 at a push in terms of fonts, and keep them really simple. Don't forget, you can have some really creative, like arty fonts like this, but how easy is this to read compared to like your very standard like Arial, Helvetica, or Open Sans fonts, sans serif fonts. This logo here is it represents a surfboard brand, so it represents that brand well. But you wouldn't use this on perhaps their website so much, because it will be difficult to read, and again lowers the trust level, lowers the engagement, and people don't buy your products as a result, or a lower number of people buy products as a result. So where and how you use fonts is really, really important, and the number of fonts you use as well. The fifth tip which I've got is about how like the emblem which you might use within your logo. So I was just talking about, so my fifth tip, these are my top 5 buying mistakes, common buying mistakes when it comes to branding. So my fifth tip is about what the logo looks like. So if it's too abstract or too cliched, people just aren't going to get it. And if somebody says to you, I like your logo, but what does it mean? How did you end up with that? Then it's not doing its job. Remember KISS, keep it simple, stupid. If you've got to explain your logo to people, it's doing something wrong. It should be, you know, you can go with some element of abstract, and like as long as you can explain it in like 4 or 5 words, then great. But if it's any more than that, it's just not really representing your business very well. So if it's, and I hate cliches, you know, like the typical IFA, saving for a rainy day man under an umbrella. God, it's sick making. Like seriously, you know, like. Either just get rid of that like cliche, that metaphor altogether, or well, yeah, just get rid of it, because it's just people will see through that and they'll just think, oh, boring, or it's again, it just lowers the level of trust which you're trying to build here with your potential new clients. So my 6th tip is based on the value of branding. So here we're not talking about how much it costs. So typically when people think of graphic design, they think of paying a designer, and it's a cost to their business. Whereas actually I consider branding to be a vital asset to your business that should build value on your business and make it more appealing to potential customers. And therefore it's not a cost that sits on your profit and loss account. It is an asset which sits on your balance sheet. It's as simple as that. It's something which is, you know, it's going to create positive affirmation, confirmation when people see, you know, if they've met you in person, they go to your website, your branding looks great, they're going to be more likely to buy than if for some reason you've done the logo yourself, the colours aren't quite right, the font's not quite right, you know, the trust level starts to get lowered. So if you pay a professional graphic design branding agency to produce your brand, it should generate business. So at the end of the day, this game is all about making money, selling products, selling services. We do that through making ourselves look awesome, basically. And when I say make ourselves look awesome, I mean make your logo, your brand, your colour schemes all sing and dance for your business and really work for you. One example I use, that's not to say that you can't get really great value for money from a graphic designer, because Nike, the Nike swoosh, cost them the princely sum of $24. So that's quite cheap considering how big Nike is. I don't know, it must be tens of billions of dollars, or if not hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of valuation now. If you compare that then to the cost of the Amazon logo, which was $24 million, you'd probably say, God, $24 million, that's expensive for a logo, isn't it? It is if it was just for a logo. The thing is, Amazon is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and so $24 million is nothing really in comparison. But when you look at how well known and how recognised the Amazon logo is, and the fact of how heavily protected that logo is, and the value that that adds to that business, $24 million is cheap in reality, compared to the value that it's creating for that business. So my next, so we mentioned the Nike swoosh. So obviously they outsourced that. I think they put that on a job site, and they got it done for $24. So there's nothing wrong with outsourcing design, but one thing which I will say is don't just outsource it. Don't just say, right, here you go, graphic designer, go and design me a logo. Be actively involved in the creative process. Don't forget, you own the brand. This is for your business. So go and sit down with your graphic designer, like sketch some ideas out with him, like talk about colours with him, talk about your core values and how your emblem, your logo is going to reflect like the core values of your business. And when he's mocking it up on his Mac, like sit there and like, you know, point at it and say, look, can you move this a pixel here? Can you possibly make that blue a little bit darker? Can you, whatever it is, like be actively involved in the creative process. Don't just give it to them and say, right, go and do me 3 logos and I'll choose the best one, because it just never works like that. It takes months and it's just an arduous process. So workshop it, sit down one-to-one with your graphic designer, get it nailed in a day, and you'll get much better results out of it. And outsourcing definitely works. Graphic designers will have a huge amount more creative input than if you're doing it yourself. So tip number 8, we do this exercise of looking at the core values of the business before we embark on the design process. And the core values are really, it's simple things like, you know, turn up to work with a smile. If you're looking at the products, you know, are they fun, high quality, cutting edge, shiny, technical, whatever the core values, the keywords that you come up with for your products, for your customers, for your business and the owners of the business. These are all really important for the creative process, because your logo has to reflect those core values. Because what you don't want is you know, imagine this logo for a surfwear brand, right? Which is it reflects a surfwear brand. But imagine this logo for a tech business, a tech startup. It just wouldn't work. Even those basic, core value of tech versus surfwear, and the sorts of people who are going to be buying those products, you can see are completely different, and will have a major impact on what the logo and the brand look like. My penultimate tip is about how you go about protecting your brand. So it's not just that we've designed a logo, now we own it type thing, or we've come up with a company name, it's available at Companies House as a business name, so therefore we own it. It's not as simple as that. Somebody may already have trademarked the brand name that you're going to be using, so they may have also protected the design rights to the brand which you're creating. So there are 4 key things which we check whenever we create a new brand, before we start to finalise all the designs and concepts and things like that. So we check domain names, see if they're available. We check at Companies House, or whatever your country's equivalent is, to see whether the company name, limited company name, is available. We check whether the trademarks are available on both the ipo.gov.uk website and the US Trademarks and Patents Office website, on a local, UK, European and a worldwide location, so you can have 3 different levels of trademarking, and also that whether the design rights are available. And design rights aren't something which I know huge amounts about, but I know if this is something you're interested in, I can put you in touch with my my trademark lawyer, design IP lawyer who'll be able to help you out. So do protect it and look into it and do the research, because it's more of an insurance policy, so that like in 5 years' time, after spending all this money on getting your brand developed, you don't then want to be told that you can't use it, and you've got to go through this whole process again and reprint and redesign all of your assets that you've created to reflect your brand. So my final tip, and this is really key. Now, I'm sure all of you have experienced this, and I've got a few issues probably with an old version of my book. I've just launched a new version of the book actually. There were some typos in there. I don't mind admitting it, because they're in my eyes they're kind of minor and people can see past that. But I have OCD. When I'm reading a book, if I spot a typo, it just really bugs me. It really narks me. So, like a lot of people, when they develop a brand or a brochure or signwrite a van or do their business cards, forget about the proofreading process. And business owners tend to think that it's the designer's responsibility to do the proofreading. It's a bit of a grey area, really. I mean, we always make best efforts to kind of proofread any documents we create with our clients or alongside our clients to cover the basis. Some designers don't bother. Some designers, you could also get a copywriter in who will be able to go through and do all the proofreading for you and produce the copy for your documents as well. But imagine if you've got a business card. Again, it's all happening subconsciously. Nobody throws the toys out of the pram and go, oh, he's got a type on his business card, I'm not going to do business with him. But you go, oh, that's not quite right, and you kind of put it in your pocket and don't think about it. And that negative feeling that you get when you see a mistake through any element of branding just lowers that level of trust. And if somebody's on the fence at the moment in regards to you or your business, those little mistakes can be the difference between getting a gig, like selling a product, selling a service, picking up, getting a new client, or maybe even losing a client. So ask yourself the question, like, how much are my customers worth to me? My personal opinion is that you should try and get as much right as you possibly can, get everything right if you can. But if you follow those 10 steps, and I'm going to point the camera at this board in a second, just so you can, you've got the 10 tips. We'll also post it after this video as well in another post. You've got the 10 tips written out. So yeah, so those are my top 10 buying mistakes when in regards to branding. In fact, let's chuck it on the board now. Let's have a look and see what this looks like. So let's just line this up. So tip number 1, doing it yourself. Should you do it yourself? Yeah, you can have a go, but only if you're a graphic designer. Tip number 2, too many colours. Look at the Apple logo evolution just to get an idea of what I'm talking about here. Tip number 3, not having any brand guidelines in place means that there's inconsistent use of your branding. Tip number 4, using too many fonts. Again, adds to a level of confusion. Tip number 5, like making it too abstract, cliched, or using metaphors that don't make sense, all lowers the trust if people have to work too hard to understand what your logo means. Tip number 6, the value of branding, and I used a couple of examples of Nike and Amazon, how much their brand cost versus how much value it brings in. Tip number 7 is looking at outsourcing design, and if you're going to redesign your brand logo, like get stuck in, go and sit with your graphic designer and workshop it like on a one-to-one basis. Tip number 8, we looked at the core values of the business, so like what core values represent your business, and those should be reflected in your branding and your logo. Tip number 9, we looked at protecting your brand through trademarks, domain name registration, company names, all those sorts of things. Speak to an IP lawyer, especially for expecting like significant scale or growth within your business. And then finally, this mistake here, tip number 10, about not proofreading your collateral once it's been, or before it goes to print, because again, all little mistakes just lower the trust levels in regards to your brand and your products. So let's just bring this back in here. So I hope you have enjoyed the video and learned a little bit about branding. Probably going to publish this on YouTube, try and get some notes up online as soon as I possibly can. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, first person to leave a question for me is going to get a free copy of my book. In fact, you know what? The first 5 people who leave a question, I'll put a copy of the book up there. Hopefully we can get a discussion going about branding and how you use it for your business. Maybe there's some things that I can help with. My book's available on Amazon, by the way, as well. So if you have found that this is significant value or will help your business, then beer tokens are always good. So go and buy the book on Amazon. It's equivalent to buying me a pint, which after a hard day's work I always enjoy. So I've been Robin Waite, author of best-selling book Online Business Startup, founder of the Coconut Group, branding agency. Happy to answer any questions you've got. Thanks.